everyone, and welcome back to the Corporate Sustainability Education channel. We are your weekly education podcast. We stream live every Friday and we're powered by the Southern Sustainability Partnership. Now, a while ago in this podcast series, we took a very comprehensive look at electric and hybrid vehicles. And then last Friday, our podcast focused on a case study with a Dorset company who were transitioning from their traditional fleet of vehicles to electric and hybrid. Now, I think they had 5 vehicles. They had 4 that were hybrid and they have 1 electric. And the person that I interviewed had opted for the hybrid solution. Now, it was such a success, he was so sold on the concept that he actually wishes he didn't have to wait another 2 years to change his company vehicle to fully electric. So as you can see that was a real success story, and he's really working hard on those petrol heads that he also works with. So that's a really good podcast to check out on the channel. We thought we would try to round up the knowledge that we're sharing with you by taking a particular look now at vehicle charging points, both from a remote perspective and also from something that you might look at to do for your home or office. So to do so, we called once again on our energy management specialist company, Zenergi, which is Zenergi. Now, they have offices around the UK. We particularly tend to work with the company where they're based at the Southampton Science Centre in Hampshire, England. Now, we've been given our expert for this podcast is Ben Foster. Now, Ben is design manager at Briar, and Briar is the technical division of Zenergi. So Brian, we're delighted for you to join us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, I think we'll start off by looking at the infrastructure in the UK. The take-up of electric vehicles, I think it's fair to say, has accelerated quite considerably over the last couple of years. I think over lockdown, I remember reading an article that said that electric vehicle take-up had perhaps exceeded that of traditional vehicles at that point. So can we start by asking you to update us on where the UK is in terms of keeping up with that demand when it comes to remote charging in 2021?
Yes, absolutely. As previously mentioned, I run the design side of Briar, and so our department specifies these units. We work on infrastructure upgrades, so these charging units can be accommodated. So it really starts with the electrical infrastructure and the connections required for these charging points. The electricity DNOs, the district network operators, such as Western Power and UK Power Networks, are continually upgrading and reinforcing their existing electricity grid infrastructure for the increased and projected demand that they're encountering now with EV charging. In 2021, there are now more than 35,000 charging points in the UK at over 13,000 locations, with approximately 7,000 charge points connected added in 2020 alone. We expect to see similar growth this year.
Wow, well, okay, that's what we needed to hear, really, isn't it? Because I know that is a question that people ask me, is the infrastructure keeping up? If I choose a vehicle, am I going to be able to charge it? There are several types of chargers available for remote charging. Can we start by looking at those different types of remote chargers available?
So the fast charge type can charge up to 43 kilowatts and can be connected from three-phase electricity supplies. This would give you approximately 80 miles per 30-minute charge. The rapid or ultra-rapid chargers, which would be again at service stations and would require extensive electrical infrastructure upgrades to serve them, such as potentially new substations may have been provided to facilitate this. But these would charge your car very quickly. I mean, you are looking at sort of within a 30-minute charge, you could get from 80 to 200 miles on a 30-minute charge alone.
So I've got a particular type of electric vehicle, I won't go into what model or make it is, but I arrive and I see a charger in front of me. What's the likelihood that it's going to be compatible with my vehicle?
It is likely. Most chargers in the UK are fully compatible. It is worth noting on the non-rapid chargers, you usually have to supply your own cable, but I think it is it is highly likely that you would be compatible.
And that cable would come with the vehicle.
Yes.
You haven't got to go to Halfords or somewhere and buy that. It would come with it.
It would. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. You've alluded to some charging times, how long it would take, but I know there's lots of different makes and models of vehicles. So can we sort of go back to that a bit and look at how long it generally takes to charge your vehicle now, and are there different categories for that?
Yeah, so I've done my own research into this actually, but I don't actually own an electric vehicle. I'll be honest, I don't own one yet. I'm obviously considering it, but my father does. So I've sort of tapped into his. So where I've got huge experience in sort of developing the infrastructure and installing these. I've never actually used one. However, so I've tapped into his knowledge. So this is a bit of a. This answer is going to be tapping into that. So from a domestic socket outlet at home, which is where he would originally have started charging his car, it can actually take around about 24 hours, believe it or not, to charge your car from empty on a domestic point. Again, you can have these fitted at home, but from the 7 kilowatt chargers, these would tend to charge your car in. The 7 kilowatt chargers can be installed at home from just a 32 amp supply, and this would charge your car in around about 7 to 8 hours. So that's quite good. That type of charge unit, you'd expect to find that at the workplace also. So again, 7 to 8 hours for a charge if your car's on charge at the office, for example, is not too bad. You're likely to be parked there all day while you're at work. And as already touched on, the rapid chargers at service stations potentially capable of charging your car within an hour. So it's enough time to grab a coffee and some shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, isn't it, where we're looking at a relatively new technology in the scheme of things. We'll put it this way: it's new to us, really. It's new to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's usually the young people who have got all this whizzy new technology, and mum and dad or grandparents are like, oh my goodness, what on earth is that? You know, they feel completely left behind. And yet actually it is the older people who are quite often leading the march in terms of buying the electrical vehicles. I suppose maybe it means they've got a little bit more money in their piggy bank than the youngsters have. But you know, I love this juxtaposition of how there's a bit of a role reversal there, and you know, they're becoming the ones that are telling us we should be using this new technology, which is fantastic.
Yes, no,
I
definitely.
think, you know, if we've got people watching or listening to the podcast and you know, they're a little bit skeptical about it, so that's really why they're listening. I think this next question is one that would really make people sit up and take notice. How much typically would you expect to pay when you remotely charge your vehicle compared to how much to fill up your car or with petrol or diesel?
Yeah, electric cars are obviously much cheaper to run. For example, it would cost around about £13 to £20 to charge an electric vehicle for 300 miles charge. This is obviously dependent on the model, but yeah, for 300 miles charge, you're looking at £13 to £20. Whereas to fill up your car with petrol for that range, and I've asked around the office as to what they feel that a good average would be, but for 300 miles in a petrol car, we felt that 40 to 45 was a fairly typical value. So obviously you can see it's potentially well over half the saving, isn't it? So it's very significant.
Yeah, I think we can all find something else we could spend that money on, really, rather than putting it into the car, couldn't we? It's always that painful time when you watch that going up, how much it's costing you. But yeah, I wanted to just ask you about the Tesla. Okay, we're particular fans of the Tesla at this channel, I have to say. You know, you can't argue with the fact that aesthetically they're very pleasing, and I'm sure they've got some great technology alongside them. I know they have. If you see a Tesla charger when you're out, and they do look quite pretty, I have to say, are they compatible with anything else but a Tesla?
So the Tesla, it's actually a Tesla that my father owns. They are very nice. He's very proud of it. So yeah, again tapped into his knowledge on this. It's fully fully compatible, really. I mean, the only caveat is you may need your own adapter, but typically the Tesla points you see out at the service stations or wherever are again highly likely to just be compatible with standard cars.
Well, that's interesting to know. I just assumed that they would have made it, oh, only Tesla owners please apply, but that's interesting to know that. Okay, so we've covered looking at remote charging. So could we look at the type of charger that you could have at your home or office? What different types there are available?
Yeah, so the type of charger I would recommend at an office and possibly at home as well, but sticking with the office for the time being, is the standard 7.2 kilowatt version. So this would be the single phase version. And that most offices at the moment, because we're in our infancy here, and companies are sort of installing 1 or 2 points. Zenergi have experience in schools where schools are looking to do this, and it is those 7.2 kilowatt versions that we're recommending and installing. So these would provide charge within around about 8 hours, which is ideal for when people are parked up. And the key thing to this is at this stage they wouldn't put too much demand on the existing electrical infrastructure at office or school, because the last thing that companies are going to want to do, particularly at this early stage where they're sort of dipping their toe in, so to speak, in terms of installing the charging points and seeing what uptake they have on it, the last thing they're going to want to do is spend a lot of money on upgrading electricity supplies, upgrading distribution boards, fuse boards, to facilitate this, because obviously that comes at cost and disruption. I think potentially as time goes on, infrastructure within these buildings will have to be potentially increased to cope with this. But I think at this stage where we're currently at, it's that 7.2 version within an office, and sort of say 2 to 4 charging points is probably what I'd recommend. And similarly at home, it's a 7.2 version that my father had installed at home. And I think it's much better for him than charging off the single 13 amp socket.
So what typical costs are we looking at for these chargers?
Yeah, for the home ones, you're looking at around £600 to £700 installed. Going back to my father, he spent £650 when he had his installed. That includes the EVHS grant reduction at £350. So yeah, at the workplace, we do tend to see slightly higher. It's probably just sort of like commercial prices with contractors installing this rather than the domestic market. But we recently installed, recently last year, for a developer client at an apartment scheme in Ashford, we recently installed 7 charging points, and this equated to around about £850 per point.
I think it's interesting from a commercial perspective as well that if you have charging point or points at your facility, I think it's great to be able to highlight that when you have meetings with customers and they're actually going to come to you. At the end of your email, say, if you've got an electrical vehicle, bring it and charge for free here or whatever. I mean, what a great thing to be able to shout about, and it says a lot about the type of company that you are as well.
It certainly does. I mean, that particular scheme, I think it was an apartment scheme, and it was planning driven, as you can imagine. However, the developers sort of turned that to their advantage, and it is within the sales literature for these apartments, these high profile apartments that are being sold. That obviously it's a great sales point.
Yeah, I think people need to realise when it comes to anything to do with running more responsible businesses, it's hard to find something that you can do in the world of corporate sustainability that doesn't benefit you either financially or from a perception, should I say, of your business. So you've touched on funding there. There is still funding available, is there? And it's funding both on a commercial level and for the homeowner.
Correct, yes. So the electric vehicle home charge scheme, which is EVHS, contributes 75% towards the cost of buying and installing a charger, and that's to a maximum of £350. Whereas the workplace charging scheme, that also contributes 75% with a maximum of £350 per charging point, and you can have up to 40 charge points on that. The only thing I would say is to potentially check your company's eligibility for that funding first. But yeah, those two schemes are sort of well worth looking into.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's money out there to help you do it, to incentivize, that's what it's all about, is to push people to do it, then yes, you check out what's available for sure. Um, I've got solar panels on my roof. That's really the holy grail if you've got an electric vehicle in it, isn't it? Is there any difference between, if you've got solar, is there any difference that you would need in your particular charge point at all?
No, I mean it's connected into your electrical supply as normal. I think obviously the difference is PV solar arrays are fantastic. They generate electricity, so you're not pulling it from the grid. You're getting it from that renewable source. A consideration may be that if you worked and that you had solar panels at home and you're at work and your car wasn't there during the day but it was there at night, obviously your solar PV array won't be generating during the hours of darkness. So the battery storage may be a consideration to install, just so as you can get used to that during the night. That can be costly, and obviously not everyone's fortunate to be able to have battery storage. But I think all in all, obviously PV solar array obviously generates its own electricity, so it's fantastic in terms of offsetting that electricity charging rather than pulling it from the grid.
Battery storage technology, I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes. That's moving very fast, so I'm sure that more affordable solutions will be available. And that, to round up that whole thing, to have the storage as well. I mean, it's just incredible. I hate to sort of touch on the subject of holidays because I know it's a sore subject for a lot of us. But if you're somebody that likes to take your car on holiday, or a business that needs to travel in Europe and you're going across to France with your vehicle and then moving to France and beyond perhaps, are you going to find vehicle charging points that are compatible with what we've got in the UK?
The short answer is yes. I think the Type 2 connector is becoming the European universal standard, and obviously you can obviously just charge your car from a single 13-amp socket. So you'd need the European adapter to do so, and it's a slower charge. But yeah, you can always do that. Also, again, from the research that I've sort of looked into, the European service stations very similar to the UK in terms of the manufacturers providing chargers.
I'd like, if I may, just to hop back onto the remote charging side of things again. So, and maybe to sort of highlight some of the issues that could come up or questions that people have got around that. One of them might be I've turned up at a service station, or I've turned up somewhere where there is a remote charger. I've plugged in my car, I've walked away, I've had my coffee. I'm a woman, so I'm bound to have got carried away with the shopping side of things. And somebody else comes along and they want to charge their vehicle. I'm in the way. Can they unplug my vehicle? I mean, how would that work? Because I've overstayed, if you like, my
Yeah, sure,
time.
sure. I understand. They can't unplug your vehicle. So basically, if you're charging and your vehicle is locked, the charger lead with the adapter would remain in the vehicle. There's no way of unplugging that. And I think at venues, obviously, there's going to be increased demand for this over the next coming years. So I believe that obviously to meet that demand, more points are going to have, the infrastructure is going to have to grow, and more points are going to have to be added. So hopefully people won't always be there. Well, people won't be there waiting for you to return, but they can't unplug the charging point now.
Maybe there needs to be some sort of horn that sounds that's really loud, or or a lot of people are going to have to start putting tannoy things out. Can so move their
Yeah. Absolutely. Some of the payment apps actually do give you a warning on notification as to when your car's sort of charging, or when your charging time is coming to an end as well. So that's a consideration that sort of usually is usually there.
Range anxiety is obviously something that's a new term that has arisen over electric vehicles, and obviously, people are planning journeys rather than just doing the pottering around at home in their home area. And the one question they've always got on their mind is, am I going to find a vehicle charging point? I know there are apps, and I know that there are websites you can go on so you can plan your journey ahead and know where they are. But apart from, coming and finding a vehicle is already in there, are there any other issues that you've come across or your father's come across that, to think about that are concerns, or is that pretty much
Yeah, so the again, as you just alluded to, my father has sort of given me sort of quite a few considerations. I think when he was researching purchasing his car, I think he felt personally that the manufacturers quoted sort of mile ranges and charging times were questionable, and I think when I looked into this, it sort of it does sort of caveat the sort of the variables that might be sort of like road conditions and weather conditions and electrical infrastructure. But he said yeah, so some of the stated charging times and mile ranges were a little questionable. To be fair, so yeah, I think that's certainly a consideration.
I think it's hard for people that are in the here and now. I shouldn't think there's anybody really now that would be able to look back at when traditional vehicles first started. There would have been all the reservations and all the questions that we have over moving to these vehicles, they would have had then. And it's like changing anything. It's that human mindset of change is difficult. But I think if you watch the podcast with the gentleman who has transitioned and can't wait to get his fully electric vehicle, and I think talk to people who have these vehicles, and I think you'll realize that very quickly they were sold and they can alleviate all of the fears that you might have. We realize here that we might not have covered all of your questions. Please, if there are any other questions that you might have, please do message us and we'll put them to Ben and we will get back to you. Ben, thank you so much for those valuable insights. It's really good that we've been able to close the loop on this subject,
Thank you.
and try to accelerate the uptake of these vehicles. You can meet the team at Zenergi at the big Sustainability Expo on the 28th of October. The venue is St Mary's, and they're very much looking forward to meeting you and answering any of your questions on a one-to-one basis that you might have. We will be including a link to the Zenergi website with this podcast so that you can take a look at what else they do. And in the meantime, we very much thank you for watching or for listening to this podcast, and we will see you in the next one.